So this is decent for We the People news. I seen this, and I thought it'd be a kind of an interesting thing to talk about and clear this up a little bit on some of the misconception of this qualified immunity thing. Again, I'm not an attorney, so whatever I say, don't take as facts. It's a learning deal, and this is going to be going by my opinion. But heed my warning anyway. Never just look straight forward. Look around you, for the outside forces may commit harm upon you. Even words. Okay? We talked about do not understand words, right? Any type of words you use in court can cause you harm. And it designed it on purpose that way. Alright. So again, this is going to be a learning process, and I may stop and go through this deal. The simple fact, this video is more for laws to train police. You know, to kind of, they're going through a training program, which they're not doing a very good job of, by the way. So these people here, if they're doing any type of training here in Texas for some of these officers, they need to do a better job. Period. So let's go ahead and proceed forward and see what we're talking about here, y'all.
Today's question is so important. It's important to every single officer watching my videos, and those that are not watching my videos. It is what happens if we lose qualified immunity, right? It's on your mind, I know it is. And if you've already lost qualified immunity in some of the states like Colorado and so forth, in New York, New Mexico, right? Then what does that mean? Okay, well, first of all, let's just get one thing out of it. What is qualified immunity? Qualified immunity is a judicially created doctrine that protects officers from lawsuits when the issue is not clearly established under the law.
Stop right there. Just some words right there. Listen to it very closely. Rewind it and listen to it again. Alright? Judges are saying that these doctrines, even though it's not law, we're going to treat it as law. Even though we don't have this power to do this, we're still going to do it. So when you guys want to talk about getting rid of qualified immunity to the cops, this got to apply to the judges and lawyers and all that too. Y'all, they're the cause and effect of these actions. Okay? And you know, a lot of times officers arrest out of retaliation or whatever. But that prosecutor is the cause and effect. That judge is the cause and effect. But they're upholding all these immunities because they got immunities themselves that they created as a bubble to protect them. So that way they can do whatever they want to do to we the people without consequences. Now, every now and then they got to show good faith, because out of 365 million people, they get us all mad, then the courthouse is tumbling down. So they got to play stupid little games with us and trick us, make believe that we actually have these rights. I call it a constitutional illusion. Alright? They use the Constitution to let you slide for face value. But you went in jail not because of the Constitution, because of civil law. And civil law and the Constitution does not run together. That's the reason why in civil law they have to have jurisdiction over you, and you got to volunteer into it. Proceed forward.
In other words, officers oftentimes make decisions in the field, constitutional decisions that are not quite black and white. You know, the U.S. Supreme Court has not addressed it. Their circuit court has not addressed it. Their state Supreme Court has not addressed this issue. So, what are they supposed to do?
I'm going to tell you what they're supposed to do. If it's not addressed, the freedom belongs to we the people. The Founding Fathers said it. If it's not in there, then it belongs to the people. If it's not delegated, you know, if there's that gray zone there, like they're talking about, and this is what happened to the Fourth Amendment, right? They've been filling in gray zones and taking from us. Okay, so we got our Fourth Amendment. They must have a warrant because we have a right to property, search and seizure and all that, right? But it says property, okay? But the Supreme Court decided that the property line is roughly around 20-30 feet around your house, okay? But if you have 130 acres of land, well, they don't consider that part of your property, okay? Even though it's your property, the Supreme Court says, well, that's kind of in that gray zone, and you know, the cops are allowed to do this and this and this. No, because it's still property. But the catch is on the 22 is the Supreme Court was actually going by, for me, the state of Texas has laid claims to the property, and we just never had remedy to take it from them. They got the landlord title. We just got the deed. That means they own the property. If you pay $200,000 for your property cash, you still don't own it. You got to pretend ownership. All it did is made you reliable for the taxes. That's all it did. It's income for the state because you are paying rent to the state. You can call taxes or whatever, but what it is you pay rent. Okay? And the land owes the money. You don't owe it. The land does. Huh. I'd like to see that contract. But in general, the gray zones, the Supreme Court's been filling in gray zones to their benefit when the Founding Father says if it's not in there, it's to our benefit. So even the Supreme Courts are lying to you. And this qualified immunity crap, they get to keep doing it because there's no remedy, and they know it. Sorry.
A timeout. Suspect, look, I'm going to time out for a second. I'm going to go seek judicial approval about what I'm going to do, and I'll be back. No, they can't do a timeout. So qualified immunity is there to protect officers except the blatantly incompetent from lawsuits for situations that are not clearly established under the law.
Okay, so we're going to go with clearly established, right? The Supreme Court already ruled on this. He's playing with the cop's head, actually. He's making this think it's not as bad as it is. But in general, it's got to have previous cases mounting up to the exact same situation you're in at the point in time. Okay? And this is a little stretched, but I'm giving you an idea. Okay? So a guy oh, well, I tell you, took a lady's purse. Okay, let's scratch that, because in a lot of cases, qualified immunity is against the Constitution, right? So, a guy is walking down the street, and some lady's purse got stolen. And the guy ran off. And you're walking within the same area. Well, the cops come running and tackle you. And then throw you in jail. Even though you don't have her purse, there's no evidence, they take you to jail. Right? But if there's a case before the qualified immunity was enacted, then that exact same instance has to be really close to the exact same thing that happened. Okay? So let's just say it's on the north side of the street, but it happened on the south side of the street, and the exact same thing happened. They can lose their qualified immunity over there. However, the courts can say, well, no, because it was on the courts said they couldn't do it because it was on the north side of the street at the time. So it has to happen on the north side of the street again. Okay? So and this is what the judges are doing nowadays, right? And they're starting to loosen up on it, believe it or not, okay? Some of the, and there was a lot of it was actually a Republican judge. It was technically on the really deep on the police side. It made it really hard to convict bad officers. So they designed it this way to make it clearly established, meant it had to have a previous case within the same guidelines that this new charge is brought on, or this new court case is brought on. Okay? It cannot be anything totally different. So that's the reason why we've been losing all these lawsuits in the Supreme Courts and lower courts, is because it's not close enough to court cases previous. Okay? Now, he's making it sound like that it's clearly established. Well, you're not allowed, well, the First Amendment says you can't go to jail for filming cops. Right? But yet, they take you to jail. Well, the courts would dismiss it, and just to keep your mouth shut, maybe the cities would pay for it. But if you literally took it to the Supreme Courts, you would lose. Okay? Because it wasn't clearly established before the deal. And what it happens is they want to pay you off so don't go to the Supreme Courts and have this on record, and then people really get mad. Sorry, stretched it out again.
In summary, to qualify for qualified immunity, right? To be immune from a lawsuit, the qualifications are this. Number one, did you even violate the Constitution? That's one question that the courts can ask and answer, right? Maybe they say, look, I know it's unclear that this officer, but we actually find that the officer did the right thing. So, boom, we don't need qualified immunity. The officer actually was constitutional. But even if the court found that the officer was conducting or doing something that was unconstitutional, right? The next question is, all right, was the law clearly established at the time? Because, again, if the law is not clearly established, then it's not fair to hold the officer liable for money damages when it's not even clear that they would have violated at the time of the act. So, clearly it's...
Okay, and this is actually true. But that means we would have millions of laws saying what cops cannot do, right? So that's not even feasible. But if like the state of Texas, if it is clearly established in law that they cannot do this, then they can lose their qualified immunity. However, if they take it to the Supreme Courts, now we're going into a constitutional area and not civil area, right? So the Supreme Court is going to say, nope. There's no previous case before this, so he gets to keep his qualified immunity. This is what happens in the lower courts. It gets moved into a higher courts, and then the federal court says, nope, you know, there's no previous case about it. And this is when officers keep winning, it's because the higher courts really, truly knock them down.
Established law comes from, again, the U.S. Supreme Court and your circuit court and your state Supreme Court. So, for example, if you're in Texas and you do something, right, and the Illinois State Supreme Court has found that what you did violates the Constitution, does that apply to you? No. That is persuasive, not binding on my Texas officers. So that is not going to eliminate qualified immunity for Texas cops, right? Maybe the court in Texas might say, hey, look, yeah, looking at this Illinois case, you know what, from now on, we're going to rule that this is illegal, right? Or I should say unlawful, or unlawful in the Constitution. So that's what qualified immunity is. Now, if we get rid of qualified immunity, then what happens is we get rid of the clearly established part. All we have to do now, if we get rid of qualified immunity, is simply ask, did the officer violate the Constitution, even if he or she wasn't on notice? The answer is yes, liable. Right? That's what this is all about. So then, if the officer violated the Constitution, even if he or she wouldn't have known, and they're liable, now let's go to the next step, which is, what is the likely outcome? Okay, so a lot of officers believe, oh man, if they get rid of qualified immunity, I'm going to be, I could lose my house, I could lose my pension. Probably not, right? That's the good news. I know overall this is a pretty scary thing, but probably not, and here's why. Because the people passing these laws to get rid of qualified immunity, I got to tell you something. They don't want you to pay. Not personally. They want your agency to pay. See, this is a money grab, right? Get rid of qualified immunity makes it easier, much easier to reach into the pockets of the taxpayer, because that's a big hurdle for them, right? These people who sue cops. Huge hurdle, qualified immunity, right?
He is literally actually true about that. It does make it easier for us to sue the city or, you know, the police unions itself. Okay? But for instance, my suit wouldn't be the cash part, right? I want that officer to spend exactly how many days I was in jail. I want that officer to spend exactly how much money I did in court out of his own pocket. And then I want him to reimburse me of my time and loss from work. Okay? And mainly, and this goes for judges and all them too. I want them to go through all this, right? So it's not just cops, y'all. I'm for any of the government, right? If they start having to pay jail time for us walking down the street at 3 o'clock in the morning and get arrested because we don't answer questions, then they need to go to jail for the exact period of time, and they need to find the exact court. Okay? If my court gets dismissed, they ought to show up on record that my court was dismissed, and when he gets released, that his should be dismissed. But if they tell me they're going to proceed forward on me for walking at 3 o'clock in the morning, well, they need to proceed forward on him. Equal justice, right? That scales, okay? We need to balance out the scales. So it's the cause and effects of action. If I get into a car wreck and it's my fault and I kill somebody, I'll go to prison. Right? But because of the cause and effect. Alright.
Can't sue you if it's not clearly established. They're basically making case law. So, but at the end of the day, when they go to the legislature and lobby for this and they have their backroom deals, they're not saying, hey, please, pretty please, give us this law to get rid of qualified immunity, and pretty please, let's have John Doe, the officer, personally liable, because we really want him to pay that $1 million judgment. No. Many lawsuits that if you lost qualified immunity are going to be in the hundreds of thousands of dollars in legal fees, damages, and so forth, right? So, who do you think officers can afford that? Most cannot, right? I mean, Don Johnson probably has a little bit of bread in his pocket. You know, he's driving around a Ferrari and stuff, but the answer is no. Most cops do not have enough money to cover the judgment. So these trial lawyers are making sure that in the bill, the taxpayer is ultimately responsible. Let me give you an example, even from Colorado. So SB 217, right, the bill that got rid of qualified immunity in Colorado, did you know that it says in there that even if the officer is found liable, right, as long as he was not willful, right, he did not willfully violate anybody's rights, the taxpayer is on the hook, not the officer. Now, even if, it says this, even if the officer was willful in some kind of punitive, willfully violated somebody's rights, knew better, right, should have known that this was a violation. $25,000. Is that chump change? No. But that's not losing your house kind of money, right? So I mean, you put up a GoFundMe, you probably can get that, right? So even in Colorado, the max out-of-pocket expense is $25,000. So that's what I also want to let you know. Now, finally, the officer says, okay, so that's where we're at, right? That's what qualified immunity is. Violation of the Constitution, clearly established. You should have known better. Get rid of that. All we have to do is find a constitutional violation, but you're probably not going to pay. But that's still not a good thing, right? Because at the end of the day, we don't want officers having a lawsuit in their name, right, and being found liable, because that's not good for the taxpayer. That's not good for the officers' well-being and mental and physical health. It's not good for your career, right? You're walking around with this black cloud over your head that you violate somebody's rights, and that's going to, stunt your professional growth. So finally, then, the officer says, what are the best strategies to protect ourselves and avoid future lawsuits? One is to work in a state that protects officers, right? I mean, there has to be a repercussion for states like Colorado hammering their cops for trying to do a thankless job and then not even getting qualified immunity. There has to be a repercussion to that. What that repercussion is, you decide what that is. But, I just hope that people going to this business, becoming cops, if they have a choice where they can live, my advice is don't become a cop in a place that doesn't have your back. Right? I mean, to me, that's it's just like going to any employer, where you come in to the job and says, hey, welcome to this XYZ profession. By the way, if you mess up, we're going to throw you to the wolves. Welcome. Do you want to start on Monday? I'll pass. The next thing is know the law, right? If you are working in a state like Colorado, New York, and so forth, guys, look, I'm with you. I know you just can't pick up and move at the drop of a hat. I understand that. And I'm not saying that you should retire on duty, but I am saying that if you are going to do this job, you've got to have your head on your shoulders, right? A good head on your shoulders. You've got to know the law. You've got to use good discretion, right? You can't just kind of fly by wire, or braille anymore, right? You've got to know the law. So in order...
Listen to that. You cannot have a fly by braille anymore. See, even this guy knows they're doing that. Alright? He's just sitting and letting them know, hey, since it's qualified immunity, you need to know the law. Well, they need to know the law anyway. Alright? And this qualified immunity thing is constitutional inbound, right? I don't know. As countless as officers, if you ask them what the 5 First Amendments are, they cannot tell you. So I still go within the guidelines of they cannot be a civil law contradicting the Constitution law. If there is, then the officer must go by the Constitution law, so he must know the Constitution right then and right there. Far more than anything else. That way he actually knows where that stop sign's at. Okay, well this law right here is a little tricky because it's kind of contradictory against the Second Amendment. It says it's not to be infringed upon, and yet this law is saying, hey, he can't carry this because he didn't get a permit. That's contradictory to the Constitution. So the officers should go by the Constitution and say, hey, well, no, it's contradictory against the Constitution and the law of the land. So I could not do nothing with him. And if I did do something, he would come after me and sue me.
To protect yourself, I'm not going to recommend go getting an insurance policy. Maybe that is what you should do.
Speaking of that, okay, the number one first thing, priority, starts all this is cops anyway. So even if they use discretion and say, hey, I cannot arrest because it's contradictory against the Second Amendment, well, the guy gets to be set free. He's not going to prison or jail at that time. He don't have all these court cases because the lawyers is not going to start prosecuting unless there is paperwork involved in it. So the first line of defense, if there's no paper trail, no prosecution, no judge.
But the better recommendation is know the law. So you're not violating people's rights. You're not even getting to that qualified immunity question because you're not violating people's rights to begin with. So here's a plug for my stuff. I have plenty of free classes every single week. I got plenty of videos on YouTube. Watch them. I got plenty of classes in person, online, on demand. Take those classes. That's what I'm contributing to your success. Take other people's training. Don't just take mine. Take other people's stuff because this is too important to try to,
Yeah, go ahead, officers. How many laws, codes, and statutes is actually unconstitutional? I'm still going to come after you constitutional rights. And I would argue to the death on the Constitution because I understand the Constitution more than the officers and the judges and the lawyers.
Hopefully be lucky and go through his career. There is no luck anymore. It has to be competence. And that's what I have for you. Okay? Also, take...
There is no more luck involved in this. It's got to be confidence. But that's what it's supposed to be in the first darn place. So this guy is leaking out things that we know what's happened to us. That is true. But he's playing out telling officers, hey, look, you got to watch your butt. No more of this free reign. You don't get to do the same things you've been doing. So, stand guard. Well, that's the reason why we want qualified immunity gone in the first place. Is so they can stand guard. Okay, for people that's watching this video from me, I'm not against officers. I do think that we need them within the guidelines. Okay? They don't get to come out and do retaliation because they believe that I don't have a First Amendment to film in public. Or they believe because I didn't get a permit, I'm not allowed to bear arms. Arms, the Second Amendment says not to be infringed on. And I don't even care about the Second Amendment. My inalienable natural rights to protect myself by any means necessary gives me that permission. That's from my Creator. Alright? The Second Amendment is for the government to say, hey, whoa, 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 whoa. No, they got this right. Alright? So don't trespass. Okay? And then we need to start adding all these things, and auditors and cop watchers. We need to start throwing this trespass at them all the time. You know, your body is your property. We call it persons and all that. But let's change the little words around a little bit and make it a little bit more scary for them. Hey, don't you be trespassing upon my property. I reside in my body. Alright? It's my residence. My house is not my residence. My body is my residence. That's where I reside in. Change these words a little bit to get a little bit more scary. And yes, it has been known to stop actually officers from touching in court for some of these people. Say, don't trespass upon me when a judge ordered them to do it. And they hesitate just because of the word trespass.
Advantage of me. I am here for your legal survival. I am here to help you learn search and seizure. And if you don't want to reach out to me and ask me questions, and you do have questions, that's on you, right? But I'm here for you. Paid or not paid, right? Go to my classes or don't go to my classes. I'm here for you because I care about your survival. And I don't want you to see you know, losing your home or anything like that. Even if you live in a pro law enforcement place, you've got to get your answers. You guys get your questions answered. All right? Look.
And we're going to go with this. For their protection, right? Not for the people's. So and I'm a firm believer, he's really directing to police officers, and that's fine and dandy for business-wise and all that. But for me as a listener here, this is all about protecting the officers and not people, right? So it's just for me as it is. I do understand what he's getting at. If you think I'm sounding rude and all that, I'm not. I'm just defining it, okay? And which is good. I mean, if he can train some of these officers a little bit better than what they are now, then these officers do need to go. To be honest. But they need to lose the qualified immunity. To be honest. These lawyers need to lose their qualified immunity. These judges need to lose their qualified immunity. I want to go after all three of them. I want all three of them put in jail for violating the Constitution. Okay? Excuse me. You know, they need to quit trespassing upon our individual rights and our inalienable rights that my Creator has given us. But these courts, with these qualified immunities, with the officers all the way up to themselves, they have a tendency to think they're allowed to trespass upon us.